Welcome to Not Your Average Counsellor, the space where we tackle the unfiltered, often messy realities of love, relationships, and human connection. I'm V Vinci, and I am not your run-of-the-mill counsellor. With over a decade of experience working with clients and my own lived experiences to draw from, I help people all their hidden parts, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because only when we face our truth can we step into our most authentic selves. This series, Messy Truths, is where we dive headfirst into the things we're all thinking, but nobody's brave enough to say out loud. You know, those 2 a.m. thoughts that make you question everything about your relationship, your choices, your sanity. We're breaking down the tough questions people are often afraid to ask. The ones that make you squirm, laugh nervously, and then immediately text your friend saying, "Oh my God, did you hear that episode?" We'll explore the emotional, psychological, and social dynamics at play. Have you ever wondered if it's manipulative to use your partner's insecurities to win arguments? Or questioned whether you should stay with someone who refuses to work on their mental health? If you've ever found yourself thinking, is it selfish to not want children when my partner desperately does? Or should I fake orgasms to protect my partner's feelings? You're not alone, and you're definitely in the right place. No sugarcoating, no cliches, just honest conversations about the messy, complicated, sometimes hilarious reality of being human in relationships. This is where your inside thoughts finally get their moment in the spotlight. Let's get uncomfortable together. Hey there, I'm V Vinci, and welcome back to Not Your Average Counsellor. Today we are talking about a question that sits at the heart of so many relationship struggles. Is it your job to manage your partner's emotions? And this one hits deep because if you're someone who grew up keeping the peace, or someone who's always been the strong one, or someone who's always been conditioned to prioritize everybody else's comfort over your own, then this dynamic can feel so normal that you don't even realize that you're doing it. But here's the truth. Caring for your partner and being responsible for their emotional world are two very different things. One builds connection. The other builds resentment, exhaustion, and emotional burnout. And most people don't realize that they've crossed the line until they're already drowning in it. So let's unpack this properly, not in a fluffy self-help kind of way, but in a grounded, real, emotionally honest way. Let's start with what it actually means to manage someone's emotions. Supporting your partner is empathy, listening, understanding, being present. Managing your partner's emotions is monitoring, calming, fixing, rescuing, preventing, or absorbing. It's stepping in before they get upset. It's responsibility for how they feel, how they react, and how they cope. And it is literally like walking on eggshells. And the shift from support to management is pretty subtle. It often starts as care, but becomes a role. You barely notice it's happening. You think you're helping, you think you're being loving, you think you're being supportive, but slowly you become the emotional regulator of the relationship, which is effectively bloody impossible. Here's what this looks like in everyday life. Your partner comes home stressed. Before they even speak, you're scanning their mood, adjusting your tone, changing your behavior, trying to keep things calm. Or you avoid bringing up something that bothered you because you don't want to set them off. Or you can apologize for things you didn't do just to smooth the tension. You might find yourself thinking, if I say this, they'll get upset, so you don't say it. That's not support. That's emotional management. And it goes both ways. I mean, I use the example of your partner coming home and you changing your tone, but that shit adjusts exactly the same way. Your partner can come home and all of a sudden he knows there's a mood and he will adjust. So you got to ask yourself, am I helping or am I protecting them from their own feelings? Now let's talk about why some people take on this role. This isn't a personality trait. It's a survival strategy. It often comes from growing up in a household where keeping the peace was necessary. Maybe you had a parent with a temper. Maybe you had a parent who shut down emotionally. Maybe you were the mediator in the family, or you were praised for being the mature one or the strong one, the easy child. Maybe you learned early that your safety depended on managing other people's moods. This is something I see often in my rooms. People who grew up walking on eggshells become adults who walk on eggshells in relationships, not because their partner is unsafe, but because their nervous system learned that conflict equals danger. So they become hyper-attuned to emotional shifts. They anticipate reactions before they happen, and they take responsibility for feelings that aren't theirs. So what does it look like? Well, your partner sighs and your stomach drops. They go quiet and you immediately assume that you've done something wrong. They look stressed and you rush in to fix it. They're upset and you feel guilty, even if it has nothing to do with you. That's not love, that's conditioning. When one partner becomes the emotional buffer, the emotional load becomes enormous. They absorb their partner's stress, anger, and disappointment. Their own needs and feelings get pushed aside. The relationship becomes unbalanced. One expresses and the other contains. One regulates and the other reacts. One unloads and the other absorbs. And this leads to resentment, exhaustion, and emotional burnout. You can start feeling like the relationship is heavy. You start feeling like you're responsible for keeping everything stable. And you start feeling like you can't relax. And here's what it looks like in everyday life. You're lying in bed, thinking about how to bring up something that bothered you without upsetting them. You rehearse conversations in your head. You downplay your feelings. You avoid conflict. If you are feeling responsible for their happiness, or you feel guilty when they are upset, if you feel like you're failing, if they are not okay, that is not partnership. That is emotional labor. Now let's talk about your partner's responsibility. Each person is responsible for identifying their feelings, communicating their needs, regulating their emotional responses, and repairing relational ruptures. Of course, you can support this, but you cannot do it for them. You cannot regulate their nervous system. You can't prevent their discomfort. You cannot protect them from their own emotions. That's what it looks like to be an emotional parent. If your partner gets frustrated and expects you to calm them down, or they get upset and expect you to fix it, they get angry and expect you to absorb it, or they get overwhelmed and expect you to carry the load, that means that you're owning their reactions. They need the emotional maturity to own their own reactions, not outsource them. So let's talk about when support turns into sacrifice. Signs that the emotional labor is uneven include constantly soothing, de-escalating, or keeping things calm. Avoiding bringing up your own needs to prevent conflict, carrying worry about how they will react to normal relationship conversations, and quite honestly, feeling more like a therapist than a partner. If you are comforting them after they've yelled at you, or you're apologizing for their reaction, or tiptoeing around topics, then you are literally shrinking yourself to keep the peace. That's not love. That's emotional over-functioning. Healthy emotional regulation includes naming feelings, pausing before reacting, owning the behavior, whatever it is, repairing when harm occurs. If a partner avoids responsibility for their reactions, the relationship dynamic becomes parent-child, not adult to adult. And once that dynamic sets in, it is very hard to feel desire, respect, or emotional safety. If you're the one doing the emotional heavy lifting while they're reacting, venting, or withdrawing without accountability, then it's gone too far into parent-child. It's not going to work. That is literally how people end up in my office. Now, let's talk about the fear of letting go of control. So this is a big one because for the partner who does overfunction, the idea of stepping back can feel dangerous. They may fear that without their intervention, everything will fall apart. They can believe that conflict equals failure. They may even think, if I don't manage this, the relationship will explode. But healthy conflict is necessary for genuine connection. And you can't build intimacy without honesty. You can't build trust without truth. You cannot build a partnership without equality. So in everyday life, that control can look like you wanting to say something, but you swallow it. You want to set a boundary, but you soften it. You want to express a need, but you minimize it. Or you want to be honest, but you're scared of the fallout. That's not safety. That's self-abandonment. So how do you shift toward healthier roles? Well, support should look like listening, validating, and asking, what do you need from me right now? Encouraging emotional expression without fixing it. Allowing space for discomfort without rushing to soothe. I think that literally, oh my God, I'm going to pull out a really ridiculous stat and go that 90% of my day is basically teaching people that sitting with discomfort will not kill you. We want to support, not rescue. So let's talk about when the pattern is a red flag. If your partner blames you for their emotional reactions, punishes you for setting boundaries, or expects you to prevent their emotional discomfort, this indicates emotional dependency, immaturity, or, at worst, manipulation. This is not support. It is control disguised as vulnerability. And this is what this looks like in everyday life. You set a boundary and they sulk or punish you. You express a need and they will accuse you of being selfish. If you say no and they spiral until you give in, well, you've been hit with the manipulation stick. They will often use their emotions as a leverage and make you responsible for their reactions. That is not vulnerability. That is emotional control. To rebuild an adult-to-adult relationship, each partner must learn their own emotional regulation skills. Boundaries become essential, not avoidant. The relationship becomes a place of shared emotional responsibility, not emotional labor falling onto one side. This shift is deeply healing for both people. Love is not about carrying another person's emotional world on your back. You deserve to be in a relationship where your feelings matter too. Healthy relationships are built on two people who take responsibility for themselves while staying connected to each other. So have a think about some of these questions. Do I feel responsible for preventing my partner from feeling upset? Or what emotions do I avoid expressing to keep the peace? And ask yourself, if I stopped managing their emotional reactions, what do I fear would happen? And what would support look like if it didn't require self-sacrifice? So thanks for being here with me today. If this episode brought up something for you, take a moment to sit with it. These patterns don't form overnight, and they won't shift overnight either. But awareness is the first step toward changing the way you show up in your relationships. You deserve a connection, and where your emotional world matters just as much as your partner's, and where support flows both ways, not just one. So come find me on socials and tell me what landed for you or what you're still trying to unpack. And if someone in your life needs this very conversation, pass it on. Take care of yourself, and remember, love grows strongest when both people take responsibility for their own emotional landscape. One of my big goals for this year is to get this podcast into the ears of more people who genuinely need it. So if this episode has made you think, feel, or see things a little differently, I need to ask you a favour. Follow it, rate it, leave a comment, or share it with someone who might need it too. The more you pay it forward, the more I get to keep doing what I do and hopefully help a few more people along the way. And don't stop there. Be sure to tag me at @VVincieTherapist so that I can see and connect with you. I love hearing your thoughts and takeaways, so my inbox is always open. DM me anytime. Thanks again for listening. I'll catch you next time.